heritage-based programs. But before I introduce this first beautiful lady next to me, I have to say, you guys have on the tables, each of you should have the handout, the correct handout that we were supposed to have for the previous panel. So it is like a 2 or 3 pager. And besides that, there are the handouts for this coming panel. So just to put the previous panel handout away, and then keep the current one that you're going to use now. And stop laughing at me. Now go ahead and laugh. Okay. Well, I have the honor to present someone who's actually a very good friend of mine, someone who I admire a lot, who has been giving the heritage language field a lot of contributions with regards to the Brazilian Portuguese teaching and programs all over the US. Here next to me is Evian. Her name is a bit tricky, even for me, Evian Destro Boruchovsky. She's a PhD student at Florida International University, and she's not only accomplished several important steps on her academic career, but just very, very recently, she was the main push for something that we believe is going to create a very big impact for the Brazilian heritage schools all over the world. She says we wrote, but she wrote and invited me for a little something. She wrote a book aimed to give basic foundational information for parents. Because we have a lot of articles, research studies, and information that are more geared to either teachers or academics or PhD professionals. And then when we want to talk to parents and engage them or complain about those things, we always complain. They bring their kids speaking English and saying, "Bye, honey, I love you." And then, this book addresses very important things. It is obviously in Portuguese, but I'll be talking to Joy on how can we share at least an outline in English so other groups create something similar. There is no need to publish a book. This was only possible because of a partnership she cultivated with the Brazilian consulate in Florida, but there's no need to even generate something in paper. We have the link for this material that totally free for anybody in any country to access. It's like 39, 40 pages. It doesn't need to be anything long, could be 10 pages, doesn't need to be printed. The message is we need to go to parents and share some of those amazingly simple but critical concepts that Dr. Kim shared with us today. I tend to be very informal, sorry. So, with no further ado, I need to give the microphone to my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. And, Ana Lucia is my friend, so there is a bias in everything that she talked about me. Well, first, I want to, it's so small, I'm sorry. I want to thank you for the invitation of being here to discuss and share questions that I'm raising. And sometimes we don't have the answers, but it's good to share our questions. And I also want to share my admiration because we are here in a Saturday far away from our families and our homes, and we made a lot of effort to be here and to share and discuss and trying to keep strong in our dedication to maintenance and develop our heritage language. So this is for me, it's very special that we are all here together, and thank you for this opportunity. So I'm sharing with you today some projects that I have develop with my students. I am a researcher and a heritage language teacher. I teach in enrichment programs in three schools, three different schools in Miami, for specific for Portuguese heritage speakers, students from pre-K to fourth grade. So obviously, I test on them everything that I learn from research and what I'm studying. So one thing that I'm really like to study is curriculum design. I am a curriculum student, and I love to read the standards. I'm the crazy people that like to read and read all the pages of the standards. And I also want to understand from my master degree. I interview community-based Portuguese teachers, heritage language teachers. And I observe that they are struggling with some questions. The first question is this a grammar class? Is this a culture class? Is this a fun class? Just fun, so they can want to come on Saturday here. What I am doing here. So I'm trying to understand what are these struggling and becoming, so I became a heritage language teacher for children too. So first thing that I am understanding that when I design my activities, I need to have very clear understanding of what is the picture that I have of my students, of what are their needs, what are the parents and the community expectation for this class. I cannot afford to just bring a class with some material that I like to teach. I need to address their needs and their expectations. So another thing that I'm thinking also, so I need to understand who they are, where they are in their language development, and what they, I cannot see my PowerPoint. Can you believe that? Yeah, sorry. And what I observed making these questions is, what I want to say is how I organizing these questions in my mind. So I keep a journal in my phone. I have an app. So every time that I finish a class, I go to my car, and before start to click on my music, I take notes. I take notes of grammar errors that I see there are patterns in my students. I take notes what I see they are interested in discuss. I take notes what I know that they need to discuss. I talk with parents like every 4 months we keep a breakfast. I talk to them. I have an open line with them by email. Sometimes I have grandparents email me to talk. I cannot understand what my grandson is talking to me. He wants to tell me about the party that he went last weekend, but I cannot understand. How can you help me? So I will share with you one activity I designed based on that feedback, that children need to be able to talk with their grandparents, with their cousins, and talk about their routine, their daily life here in the United States. They want to share with that by FaceTime, by Skype, and how we can help them to have a meaningful and a great conversation with their family about what they are doing in their, this 6-year-old need to share with their grandparents what they are doing, what they are doing here at school or the weekend. So what I came up about this need is, let's organize a newsletter, because I know that these children need to improve their writing skills and improve some grammar accuracy in speaking also. So I came up with this idea, let's organize a newsletter when they will interview each other and will write 2 or 3 paragraphs describing their routine. So I can address some needs of them, and I can engage them in a meaningful activities, and I can also be aware that this is a language culture class. This is not only a language. I'm not teaching grammar lessons. I may focus on grammar in some activities, but it's not a grammar lesson. I'm not making they conjugate a list of verbs. And this is not only a culture class when they only play some music and discuss things. They need to develop language, and they need to discuss about their routine. So I create this newsletter, and this project was adapted from 2nd to 4th grade. What are the goals? First, I thought that it's very important they develop the vocabulary. They do not have vocabulary because this they use, grandparents is struggling to understand because they switch for English every time they don't have the word. So we need to help them build this vocabulary. We think, and parents think they know to talk about their routine in Portuguese, but they don't know. You keep seeing, if you talk to them, they switch very often, and the grandparents do not understand what is going on. So the goals were to develop vocabulary about routine, develop the grammar gender in Portuguese, and at this stage, usually they know there is grammar gender in Brazil, in Portuguese, but they don't know exactly where to put, how to use that. So they need not the awareness, but they need to be conscious about this grammar rule and how to raise that. So I understand that in bilingual language acquisition, we have to offer quality of input and make them produce language so they can meet the threshold or where they internalize the grammar rule and try to produce hypotheses and try to consolidate that knowledge. So I'm providing this opportunity to them. Also, I have observing that my students need to understand the difference between writing and speaking because they transfer everything that is speaking to writing. They need to start to observe. Well, it's different, and we need to complete the words. We need to put in Portuguese, I am, it's eu sou. They speak eu sou, and they write eu sou without the final letter. So they need to start to observe. There is a difference, and they need to observe that. So, and because it's a paragraph, they need to start to be aware of using connectors and pronouns and everything. So I use a project-based approach with dividing tasks, and in these tasks, sometimes I'm focused on grammar accuracy. So this was the essential questions. I'm based on backward design, so I have my learning expectations. My essential questions are the guides of my activities, my project. So what is your routine? What do you do every day that is your obligation? What do you do that is not your obligation? What do you like to do? So why you do that? Why you have to do it? And then we started discussing, and I also think a lot about critical thinking. So I bring some videos or newsletter. There is a Brazilian newsletter for children in Brazil, so I bring them. They are describing their routine, videos from indigenous children in Brazil, children from São Paulo, describing their routine. And they can compare and share what are the differences, what are the commonalities, and how we live in the United States, being Brazilian and American, we have difference and commonalities in our routine. So another important is that I organize this instruction cycle, input, quality of input, production, noticing the grammar accuracy that I have to reach, and editing all the time. So these are the stage of the process. First I introduce the team. I work with vocabulary. Then I organize the questions. Every time we come back, it is a 7, 8 weeks project. So then we do the interviews, they do the editing, we share texts, read aloud. So this is very important for the presentational mode. They need to switch. I'm speaking with my friend, interview then I need to write. It's another circumstance. Then I need to present the text for my friends. These are very different circumstance modes of communication. Then we finish always comparing, establish critical thinking, comparing everything, and what I have learned from with grammar, and what I have learned from my culture, and what I have learned about myself doing this project. Another thing that I just want to highlight, because I have like 2 minutes, it's learning vocabulary is a very, there needs to be learned very consistently in a long period of time. So because I'm talking about routine, I'm bringing in a lot of adjectives so they can classify themselves and they can describe themselves, they describe their routines. But if I do this, it's only one class, they will not they will not consolidate that knowledge. So vocabulary need to be learned. You need to use, this is research, at least 7 times consistently meaningful, produce, is not see, is not read. You need to produce consistently from 5 to 7 times a word in a different space of time, in different days, in different moments, to consistently learn a word. So how much we are doing that when we design our activities. Another aspect, when we teach vocabulary, there are in the paper, in the table, there is the 9 aspects of vocabulary. It's here, but in the paper you have one of the handouts. There are much more on vocabulary to explore than listening a word and know its meaning. That we can associate where this word can fill out in a map of concept. We can think about constraint. This word needs a preposition. This word needs a pronoun. How to bring that activities that that not only work with meaning, but work with different aspects of vocabulary. This is a tool that we can use in our class. So this is idea that we choose to work in vocabulary. I bring a list. We can discuss the list, and then they need to write sentence about it, to tell the sentence for their friend, to their friends. They need to tell me what their friend told about themselves. So we are trying to produce meaningful conversation using the new words. And then they can use the word when they practicing, fill it out, the interview, and producing their text. Well, this is an example of the newsletter. It's I made the newsletter based on a Windows frame, and I type the interviews after 8 weeks of editing, 8 weeks, mixing Portuguese, 8 weeks of editing. We came out with this new newsletter. They were very proud, and the parents had access what we were doing in our class. So the parents understood why heritage language is so important, and they need to invest in. They saw they are learning. Okay? Well, thank you.
So, because I introduced one friend before, I don't want to be hated by the second presenter by starting with her name wrong, right? Jeez. So, this, as you guys will notice, this was a panel that it was very well planned. even discussed among themselves. So the handouts reflect their dedication to making this workshop productive. So now I'm introducing the second presenter, Daiva Navitskas. Yes! See, bilinguals, trilinguals, they learn language and other challenges much faster. She is the chair of the Lithuanian Education Council, is that correct? Ah, okay. Wow, I envy the existence of an education council for the Lithuanian. Former head of Boston Lithuanian School and Education, who's going to share now a lot of her experience in brief, 10, 15 minutes? 15, wonderful. Please.
Good morning or almost afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's eaten a little bit because you're going to have to work hard when we break up into small groups. This is my first time at this conference, and I wasn't sure about where everyone who's attending and presenting what their experiences are as community-based heritage language schools. And as I listen, I felt it was important that I share with you how Lithuanian schools, which are almost 70 years in existence in the United States, what the premise was, what the basis was for them being formed, just so you know where we're coming from. So a little bit of history. Eastern Europe, post-World War II. If you know or don't know, after the war ended, the Soviet Union incorporated the Baltic states, of which Lithuania is one. Most of the people had fled to Germany awaiting the end of the war. However, according to Stalin, everybody in the country voted to become part of the Soviet Union, even though the majority percentage of people were not there anymore. So my parents were part of those people. They ran and planned to go back. All of a sudden, can't. Iron Curtain came down, bing. Now, historically, Lithuania has always had issues with Moscow and Russia, and was under Russian rule for many years. And whenever they came to rule, they tried to decimate the culture of Lithuania. So everything was changed to Russian, signs were changed to Russian, people were not encouraged to go to school. I'm talking back in the beginning of last century. So once Lithuania regained its freedom, my parents and all these other people who had lived in Lithuania that was independent for quite a while after World War I, found themselves bereft. Many came here to the United States, Canada, elsewhere, wherever they could get a sponsor. Amongst those people, there was a huge proportion of highly educated people who did not know English, who could not continue working as teachers. They worked in factories, all right? However, their legitimate concern for the culture being completely decimated. No more Lithuanian, no more Lithuanian culture, everything would be Russian, all right? So they were really, really concerned that it was up to them, the diaspora, to maintain the culture and the language. And since there were so many people who were very happy to teach in these schools were formed initially in Chicago, Cleveland, and Detroit. There were a lot of Lithuanian immigrants there. And then later, these same teachers voluntarily came up with a program, wrote books, and we have the benefit of that now, 70 years later, where most of these schools are still not only functioning, but flourishing. So just so you know, so this language is not like being taught in a regular daily school. It's only being taught on Saturdays. Now, The last wave, we always count how many waves of immigration we have from Lithuania. So this is the 6th wave. And they're here now. Of course, now Lithuania has regained its independence. So, and many of these new children are very fluent in the language because they came over from Lithuania. However, there are those like myself who graduated this Lithuanian school. My children, my grandchildren were like how many generations away. So some of us are able to send our children to Lithuania to be with their grandparents or their relatives, to be immersed for 2 months in Lithuania. But the rest of us try to keep the language and culture going, and culture with a capital C. Culture is huge. Okay, every so many years we have a giant song festival, we have a giant dance festival. There just was one this summer here actually in Baltimore. We had over 2,000 dancers performing. So this is huge. And the song festival also, we had over 2,000 singers who learned the repertoire and performed. So that's part of it. So I just wanted you to be aware of where I'm coming from and where we're coming from with the Lithuanian schools and the way they've developed here in the United States. So now I want to tell you 2 stories. And this is a very passionate aspect for me about Lithuanian schools, of which not only I'm a graduate, but also was a director of. So this is Nia. Nia is 10 years old, 4th grade. She attends a community-based language school. And she's, you know, she likes school in general, but she recently moved into the area. So she comes to the school, it's maybe a few months into school. She comes into it's usually a building that's being rented. It could be a church hall, it could be another school. And she comes in there, and the process is she walks to her classroom. She walks in and she knows, you know, okay, this is my classroom. Her teacher's too busy to really pay any attention to her because she just walked in. So she goes and sits down at her desk. And as time goes on, the next 10, 15 minutes, children, come in and populate the desk. Maybe 12, maybe 14 children. Nia her language skills are totally okay. She's able to do the curriculum. She's done the homework. But she doesn't know anybody else in the class. She doesn't live there. Everybody basically commutes. She doesn't know the other children's names. There has been no venue for her to learn her classmates' names. So now it's lunchtime. They go out for recess. One of her classmates, or a little boy, pushes her accidentally down. Nia would like to go to somebody to kind of raise that issue. She goes to her teacher, but not much is done about it. Now, I just want to tell you the majority of the teachers in the Lithuanian schools are not educators. They are very kind parents who have agreed to come and be with their children. And as part of the Lithuanian Educational Council, we wanted to, as much as possible, bring in some pedagogical precepts. Okay, so that's Nia. When her mom picks her up, she likes the school, but she feels lonely. She doesn't know anybody there. She participates, but she doesn't really know. When her birthday's coming up, if mom says, would you like to invite someone from your Lithuanian school? She really doesn't know the other children. And she says no. That's one scenario. This is Julius. So Julius, those of you who know, he's lost a tooth, so he's 7 years old. He's in 2nd grade. He also attends a community-based school. When he walks in on the day that the school is happening, and he goes to his classroom, his teacher greets him. Hi, Julius. How are you? You having a good day? Shakes his hand. Julius then goes into the room, and there's a big display. It could be a Post-it note or something. There's always something there for whoever, as they come in, to see what the morning activity is. So Julius goes over there, and today there happens to be a little survey for him, and as the children come in to fill out. The survey is saying, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Now, as I'm telling you these things, obviously it's in the language. It's not in English, okay? So Julius, picks whichever ice cream flavor. He marks it. As he's doing that, other children come in. He knows all the children. And then they all stop what they're doing once they're all there, and they gather together for morning meeting. Julius loves his community-based language school. He knows all the children in his class. He knows all their names. The teacher has made an effort to make sure that happens. He likes that school as much as his regular weekly school. When he's thinking of having a birthday party, he will happily invite all these children. Now, I'm throwing out the question to you. If we take away the intellectual value of learning another language and that your parents are of that ethnic background, which of these two children will associate something pleasant with the fact that they know this other language? Because if all they associate is either confusion or loneliness, then the likelihood of them feeling an attachment and being engaged is slim. And I can tell you countless examples of Lithuanians that I know that, as they grew up, because they didn't have a good social experience, they want nothing to do with Lithuanians. They equate Lithuanians with, oh, they were nasty to me, they were bullies, they were this. So my point is, it's the social is crucial. Okay, I'm not going to talk about how to introduce grammar and all that. We have a curriculum. Does that mean 5 seconds or 5 minutes? Okay. Okay. So what I'm a proponent of and what I feel very passionate about, because I'm also, I've been teaching for over 30 years on a regular basis. So it's responsive classroom. Has anyone ever heard of that? Oh, good. We have some responsive classroom people. So in responsive classroom, it mattered that I came. That's how the student feels. They feel that they are important. They're not just yet another face in the crowd. And it has nothing to do with how well they know the language or not. Okay, but it mattered that you came. So, in the responsive classroom philosophy, the academic is integrally mixed or connected to the social. As you know, especially young children, they learn tons of things interacting in the playground. They get a lot of learning that way. I mean, you can teach them, the words and the vocabulary and everything, but you want them to love the other children that they're in that school with. Then they'll want to go there, even when it's, 6th day of school, homework, difficult. So it's crucial. So, as I mentioned, for Julius, his teacher greeted him, something simple like that. When he comes into the room, into the door, she makes eye contact and says, "Good morning, Julius." He's not just a number. He's not an unknown quantity. This is so easy to do, and yet it's a huge difference to how that child feels because someone said their name and talked to them. So, the greatest cognitive growth occurs through social interaction. And so a social curriculum is as important as an academic curriculum. The how they learn this, how they are being engaged, is as important as the content. You can have fantastic content, but if it's not being presented in a manner that the student can absorb and you know, have part of them, it's just not going to happen there. This is just a little acronym. It stands for cooperation, assertion, responsibility, empathy, and self-control. These are social skills that we want to build on in that classroom. You need to know your children, their families, what their cultural attachments are, and where they are developmentally. And we need to be role models, we the teachers, the administrators. Frequently, teachers will teach children, and then they themselves don't do that. They don't talk to one another, they don't say hello. So a day in a responsive classroom. You have something called morning meeting. It motivates the children, which includes a greeting, okay? Sharing, possibly. Now, many of you, if you have small children, you know that probably they've had sharing in their school. Some sort of group activity that is academic-based, and a morning message. And I refer to that a little bit as the child comes into the classroom and there's a morning message. So what's a greeting? It's a friendly and respectful salute. And we'll do a practice greeting here later. Sharing. Important not only for the sharer to learn how to share, how to talk about something that they've brought in. Prior to this, the teacher's gone over the rules of asking questions. Someone shares something, what are appropriate questions that you can ask about what that person shared? So you kind of model that. A group activity, again, this is something that could definitely be based on curriculum, and it builds the whole class identity. Again, you want the class to feel like they're a community. 1 minute, got it. No 2-minute warnings? Okay. Okay. Okay, and then morning message. So this is what I mentioned, a letter to the class. In this particular case, not only do the children read it when they come in, but there's an opportunity during morning meeting to either have a child come up there and read it. Some of the certain things can be emphasized depending on what you are doing in your class and what you are learning. This is another one where the teacher asks, what did you do on February break? And she left little sticky notes, and the students have to write down what they did. Now just think, if you're teaching another language, of all the possibilities that you can incorporate with this in a fun way. I know where they are engaged. And here's another example. So you can incorporate an activity for something for them to do. So they've walked into the class, they feel like they've been identified, welcomed by the teacher, they know the other children, and we're good to go. We've set the tone. Now, a lot of these activities work really well with younger children. However, they also work with middle school. And as you know, if you have any middle schoolers or teach middle schoolers, and especially in our age, where everything is head down and thumbs and doing social media, what happens with eye-to-eye social interaction? It's just as important for us to encourage that in our community-based schools as it is in everyday school. So a middle schooler, this is a perfect opportunity to bring up issues that maybe something happened in the class, someone was bullied. If you have a tone where the class feels that they're a community, they will discuss it. And if you know middle schoolers, they love to discuss and opine on things. And you have built subconsciously a community that happens to be based on their ethnic, the reason they're there is because of their ethnic background. So to me, it's an absolutely powerful tool. And these are some resources. What I want to do is, we are going, I guess it's time we can talk. So this is just to kind of give you an overview. And Vivian, where's Vivian? Okay, I hope you're okay if I introduce. Okay, so the plan is on your tables, and I know you've got a lot of different handouts. And I want you to focus. We have 2 handouts that are based for us. And one is, it says at the top, says ghost spelling at the top. Okay? Oh, yes. Ghost spelling. It's 2 pages. You don't have? You should have. The next page. Okay, I'm sorry. Did you staple all of them, Joy? Okay, and then there's page 2. And then there's a sheet that has a table with blanks. That's going to be what you fill in. So first you're going to do, and I've given you some resources of different greetings and some activities. I will have you actually engage first in a greeting. We'll all experience that. And then I'll have you do an activity. You'll all experience that. And it's vocabulary based. And then you'll have an opportunity to either look at some of the other suggestions, come up with your own activity. Vivian presented hers. So you can come up with a few things that you can bring back to your own setting and use. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to make sure that we have at least 8 people at a table. So can you move so we have people? Otherwise this won't be interesting. Yes, at least. Yes. All right, I'll wait till everybody's seated in a group. And especially, this is going to be an icebreaker, so you'll get to meet other people, not just the ones you came with.
I love the letter. For the letter introducing the class.
Okay, are we kind of getting settled? You'll have fun, I'm guaranteeing it. Yeah, it can be more than 8. I didn't want any tables with. Yay, okay. All right. So I believe, I don't know if it's on page 3, it says greetings at the top. Is that page 3? Okay, I'm going to tell you which greeting you're going to do. You can either read it or listen to me explain it. We're still waiting as people are deciding. Do, 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 do. Yeah, just join in so we can get this going. Are we ready, Joy? Can you think I can start? I want every. Yes. Okay, we're ready. All right. So we're going to do the greeting that's called. I'll wait a little bit. Okay, up here. I was at a conference yesterday where they asked us teachers, how do you get kids to quiet down? And it was just be quiet, and the kids figure out that, uh-oh, someone's waiting. So same thing, I guess, with everybody. All right, so we're going to do the greeting that's called calling all friends. Now, what you need to think about is you're going to think about, well, obviously you know your first name, but I want you to think of an adjective that you could put in front of your first name that starts with the same letter. All right? So for example, I might say dancing diva. Okay? So once you've thought of it, you go around the circle and just pick someone to start with, and each person says their name. Okay, that's step one. Their name with an adjective. Now, I don't. We could be really inventive and have you say it in the language that you speak, but let's keep it in English for now. Okay, number two. Number two, once everyone's heard everybody's name with the adjective, again, start with the first person. The first person picks another person. It doesn't have to be the one next to them. It could be across the table, and says, good, calling Musical Maria. Good morning. Musical Maria will answer. Good morning, Dancing Diva. Then Musical Maria turns and will say, call the next person until everybody's been called. Do you understand? Okay, any questions? Too confusing? Okay, so step one, you go around and each attach an adjective to your name. Step two, one person starts and calls someone else. And you see how many names you can remember. Okay? Go ahead and do it.